The coup attempt, at first glance, seemed devastatingly effective. The presidential palace had been overrun. President Ibrahim Traoré had been taken into custody. Loyalists were scattered. French-backed military officers roamed the corridors of power like vultures circling a wounded lion. The foreign media, always eager to write off Africa's efforts at sovereignty, prepared their headlines. Burkina Faso falls to pro-Western coup. And yet, despite the chaos, despite the guns and betrayal, there was one force the plotters had tragically underestimated: Ibrahim Traoré's ability to command the spirit of an entire nation, even from the confines of a prison cell. It all began at exactly 3:14 a.m. The capital still slept beneath a canopy of stars when the first crack of automatic gunfire split the silence. President Traoré was not asleep. He was seated at his desk in the modest office of the presidential compound, surrounded by papers and maps, reviewing gold and oil contracts that foreign corporations were pressuring him to renew. These were the very agreements he had vowed to tear down, determined to bring back ownership of Burkina Faso's vast mineral wealth to the hands of its people. Suddenly, the office door burst open. Captain Rao, his trusted chief of security, rushed in, eyes wide, breathing hard. "Mr. President," he barked, "we're under coordinated assault. Gunmen have breached the compound's southern perimeter. They're inside." Traoré's face remained composed, almost stoic. He had known this was coming. Intelligence reports had warned of brewing unrest, grumblings among elite units with long-standing loyalty to former French commanders. "How many?" he asked, his voice low and measured. Rao hesitated before responding. 40 to 50, sir, possibly more. They're wearing our uniforms, but they're not our men." "3rd Battalion?" Traoré guessed. "Yes, sir," Rao confirmed grimly. "Led by Colonel Pierre Zongo." Traoré's jaw tensed at the name. Colonel Zongo had once been a friend, a fellow cadet at the military academy, a brilliant strategist, but one always seduced by Western flattery and promises of wealth and power. "Evacuation?" Traoré asked, though he already suspected the answer. "Compromised," Rao replied. "They struck faster than anticipated. The Presidential Guard is engaging them at the rear gate, but they're heavily outgunned." The president stood up slowly, smoothing out his military jacket. Plain, functional, with no golden stars or flashy ribbons. It was a symbol of who he was, a soldier of the people, not a ruler of privilege. "There will be no evacuation," he said firmly. "We will not endanger more Burkinabe lives, not for me. The presidency is not worth bloodshed in the halls of the people's house." Rao looked heartbroken. "With all respect, sir, if they capture you, then we fight another war," Traoré interrupted calmly. "Not with bullets, but with truth and resolve." He glanced at the clock. "Activate Protocol Sierra." Rao froze for a moment, eyes widening. Protocol Sierra was a last-resort contingency, a plan that didn't protect Ibrahim Traoré's life, but safeguarded Burkina Faso's independence if he was captured or killed. It would trigger the release of classified videos, international appeals, mass mobilization strategies, and a call to every village elder and youth movement. Rao saluted. "It will be done, Mr. President." Outside, the battle grew louder. Heavy boots pounded stone floors. Shouts echoed. Smoke filled the compound. "Go now," Traoré said, voice steely. "That's a direct order." Rao disappeared through a hidden passage concealed behind a sliding bookshelf. Traoré, now alone, turned off the digital recorder he had been using and slipped it into his breast pocket. Moments later, the door burst open again. Soldiers stormed in, heavily armed, alert, yet visibly hesitant. Their leader stepped forward. It was Zongo. "Ibrahim," he said, tight-lipped, "you're coming with us." Traoré met his old friend's gaze. "On what charges, Pierre? Is patriotism now a crime? Is it a crime to ensure that our gold funds schools and hospitals instead?" Of stock portfolios in Paris? Zongo's expression flickered. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Come quietly. You'll be treated with dignity. I've never feared death, Traoré replied, lifting his hands to show he wouldn't resist. But ask yourself, who stands to gain from this tonight? The people or the corporations who once called our land Upper Volta and fed off its poverty? Several of the armed men looked away, unable to meet their president's eyes. They led him through corridors stained with blood and chaos. Doors hung off their hinges, bullet holes pockmarked the walls. Among the debris lay the shattered shields of his loyal guards. How many? He asked quietly. Zongo, not looking at him, muttered, 12 of yours, 4 of mine. Traoré closed his eyes. 16 sons of Burkina Faso, sacrificed on the altar of foreign greed. 16 mothers will weep tonight. One young soldier. Behind him faltered, blinking away tears. They brought him to a secure chamber in the East Wing, a steel-reinforced safe room once built to protect the president from assassins. Tonight, it would serve as his prison. You'll remain here until the public announcement, Zongo said. I suggest you start writing your resignation. It'll save you and the country a lot of trouble. And if I don't? Traoré asked. Zongo paused, then replied coldly, then we'll announce something else. The door slammed shut. Alone in the darkness, Ibrahim Traoré sat on the edge of the simple bed. No windows, no camera, just silence. But he wasn't broken. That silence, his battle had only just begun. The reinforced door was built to keep enemies out, not to cage the soul of a nation within. Without weapons or tools, escape was a fantasy. But time? Time was still his. Ibrahim Traoré checked his watch, 4:27 a.m., and committed the moment to memory. The coup had unfolded with brutal efficiency, as most military operations do. Precision strikes, silent corridors filled with echoes of betrayal. But this was only the beginning. What followed would be the more dangerous stage, the political phase, the consolidation of power, the search for international validation, the reshaping of truth through televised lies. Sitting on the edge of the bed in that featureless, fortified cell, once designed to protect him from foreign assassins, now turned into his prison, President Traoré closed his eyes. He did not pray for rescue. He did not fantasize about escape tunnels or cinematic interventions. Instead, his mind sharpened with unrelenting clarity. This was no longer about survival. It was about seizing the narrative. If they planned to steal the presidency, he would ensure they could not steal the hearts of the people. A quiet knock broke the stillness. The door creaked open. A young soldier stepped in nervously, clearly conflicted. Yes, sir, the boy stammered. I was at the Bissa gold mine 3 months ago when we opened the new clinic and the school. It was an honor. Traoré smiled faintly, no anger in his tone. Built with revenue redirected from that mine, he said gently. After years of foreign companies extracting our gold and leaving behind only poisoned rivers and 3% royalties. The private shifted uncomfortably. Private? What's your name? Salam Wado, sir. Tell me, Private Wado, did Colonel Zongo explain what happens after I'm removed? He said there'll be elections. Wado said hesitantly. That order will be restored. That things will get better. Traoré nodded slowly, feigning reflection. And have you heard any foreign voices since last night? French accents, perhaps? There was a flicker, a flash of truth behind Wado's eyes. He stiffened. I have to return to my post, sir. Of course, Traoré said calmly. But remember what you've seen here, and what you've not been told. After the soldier left, Traoré permitted himself a small, quiet smile. He had his confirmation. The French were not just influencing, Events from afar. They were inside the palace, directing, whispering, planning. The coup wasn't just homegrown discontent, it was engineered subjugation. At precisely 10 a.m., the door opened again. Colonel Pierre Zongo entered, flanked by 2 armed guards, his expression a cold mask of authority. "It's time," he said bluntly. "You'll read this at noon. Live broadcast. The country will hear it from your own lips." He handed Traoré a printed statement. The president's eyes moved swiftly across the page. It was a fabricated resignation, citing health concerns, pledging support for a transitional military council, and promising a future return to constitutional order. It was a lie wrapped in the language of diplomacy. "And if I refuse?" Traoré asked, tone measured but firm. Zongo didn't blink. "Then we release documents. Records of your supposed offshore accounts in Dubai, bribes from Chinese mining interests, enough to bury your legacy." Traoré let out a short, incredulous laugh. "Fabricated nonsense. I've never taken a single franc that wasn't part of my official salary, and unlike your allies, I don't wear French watches on Burkina Faso time." Zongo shrugged, indifferent. "Truth doesn't matter anymore. Only what people believe." "You're wrong," Traoré said, his voice steady, cutting through the air like a blade. "The truth always matters. It might be delayed, distorted, or buried. But eventually, like water, it finds its way through even the hardest stone." Zongo shifted, briefly uncomfortable. "You have 2 hours to decide. Choose wisely." Once the guards had gone, Traoré tore the resignation letter into small pieces and flushed them away. Then, from beneath his shirt, he pulled out a small digital recorder they had failed to find, another sign of their hastily executed plan. He clicked it on. "This is President Ibrahim Traoré. It is now 10:15 a.m. I am recording this from within, the presidential palace, where I am being held against my will. Colonel Pierre Zongo has confirmed, both by word and by omission, that foreign involvement is at the heart of this coup. They want a resignation, a lie told in my name. I refuse. Let this be known. The Burkina Faso people deserve the truth, not a puppet regime owned by gold." At exactly noon, he was escorted into the palace's media room, once used for hopeful addresses, now prepared for forced confessions. Cameras were in place, microphones live. Off to the side, Traoré spotted a man he didn't recognize, Caucasian, civilian clothes, directing technicians in French-accented English. Their eyes met briefly before the man looked away uneasily. "Sit," Zongo barked. "Read the statement. Now." Instead, Traoré looked straight into the camera. "People of Burkina Faso," he began, his voice strong, unbroken. "I do not speak to you from a place of power, but from captivity inside our own palace. At 3 a.m. last night, a faction of our military, led by Colonel Pierre Zongo and advised by foreign agents, attempted to seize control of this country." Zongo lunged forward. "Cut the broadcast, now!" he shouted. But the technician didn't move. He was frozen, hands nowhere near the controls. "I have been ordered to read a false resignation. I refuse," Traoré continued. "The soldiers who surround me are not my enemies. They are my brothers, misled, perhaps, but still Burkina Faso. The true architects of this betrayal are not even from this continent." The foreign advisor was now yelling, his voice rising in panic. Still, no one stopped the feed. No one touched the camera. "As I speak," Traoré said, "documents are being released. To our national media, to international allies, to every African capital. Proof of foreign money funding this coup. Proof of mining companies and intelligence. Services trying to drag Burkina Faso back into chains of exploitation." Zongo stared at his phone. Notifications exploded across the screen. News alerts, social media, leaked documents. The plan was crumbling. "To every soldier involved," Traoré said, now standing tall, "look to your officers. Ask who received sudden wire transfers from overseas banks. Ask why foreign military advisors landed in secret 3 nights ago. One of the guards lowered his weapon slightly, eyes wide with doubt. To our allies abroad, those who believe in freedom, not just profit, this is the time to stand with Burkina Faso. He paused. And to those powers who still believe they can dictate Africa's fate behind closed doors, we are not your colonies, not anymore, not ever again. The room was dead silent, but across Burkina Faso and across Africa, the truth had begun to rise. To those foreign powers who have long viewed Africa as nothing more than a treasure trove, a boundless reserve of resources to exploit at will, and who believe they can manipulate the political destiny of our nations by installing or removing leaders like pieces on a chessboard, your time has come to an end. The illusion of control is broken. The studio door burst open with sudden force. Captain Ouedraogo entered, flanked by armed soldiers bearing the insignia of the 1st Battalion, loyal to the constitutional government and to President Traoré. The palace perimeter is secured, Mr. President, Ouedraogo announced firmly. The 1st and 4th Battalions have officially declared their allegiance to the elected government and reject the legitimacy of this attempted coup. The 2 guards who had been standing beside Traoré looked at each other, their grip on their weapons faltering. Their eyes shifted to Colonel Zongo, who remained paralyzed, eyes glued to his phone. Streams of messages and alerts flashed across his screen, news headlines, social media eruptions, and leaked documents confirming what Traoré had just revealed. Live to the world. With calm authority, Traoré stood from his chair. "The choice is yours now, Colonel," he said, his voice carrying the weight of national history. "You can either double down on this failed coup and face the full consequences of treason, or you can help me expose the true foreign masterminds behind this plot and restore your dignity in the eyes of your people." Silence gripped the room, like a storm held just before it breaks. Then slowly, with the burden of a shattered illusion settling on his shoulders, Zongo stepped forward and placed his sidearm on the table beside him. "How?" he asked quietly, defeated. "How did you dismantle this operation so quickly?" President Traoré didn't gloat. His face was calm, resolute. "Protocol Sierra," he replied. "It was created for this exact scenario. The moment Captain Ouedraogo escaped the compound, a cascade of secured transmissions began. Intelligence, files, intercepted communications, payment records, surveillance images, all automatically sent to trusted commanders, community leaders, and independent media. The truth was unleashed faster than your lies could take root." His voice hardened. "In the coming days, I will present all this evidence to the African Union, to the United Nations, but most importantly, to the people of Burkina Faso. The era of resource colonialism is ending. Our wealth belongs to our children, not to shareholders, in Paris or Beijing." The broadcast continued for several more minutes, with Traoré outlining a path forward, a national call for unity, accountability, and a renewed dedication to independence. When the cameras finally stopped rolling, he turned to Captain Ouedraogo. "Casualties?" he asked. "Minimal, sir. Once our soldiers saw the truth, they laid down their weapons. Most of the 3rd Battalion surrendered voluntarily. They were manipulated, not traitorous." Traoré nodded in grim approval. "And the French delegation? Trying to flee the country. Their private jet is grounded. The airport is locked down. We're treating them with full diplomatic protocol, but they aren't going anywhere until we complete the investigation." What followed was a revelation. The coup had been meticulously engineered by French intelligence operatives working alongside executives from global mining conglomerates. Since Traoré had nationalized Burkina Faso's gold mines, redirecting profits to build schools, hospitals, and infrastructure, the foreign firms had suffered massive losses. To reverse this, they had enlisted Colonel Zongo and others, promising wealth and political power in exchange for obedience. What they hadn't planned for What they couldn't have foreseen was Protocol Sierra, a defense mechanism not based on military strength but on truth, transparency, and rapid information warfare. It was Traoré's greatest weapon. By 7 p.m., less than 16 hours after the attempted coup, Traoré stood on the presidential balcony facing a vast sea of citizens. The plaza below overflowed with people waving Burkina Faso flags, chanting, and holding handwritten signs. No to foreign interference. Our gold, our future, Africa for Africans. Today, Traoré proclaimed, his voice echoing across the capital, Burkina Faso passed a test, not of weapons, but of will, and we emerged not broken, but stronger. This victory is not mine. It belongs to every citizen who refused to be silenced, to every soldier who chose loyalty to truth over obedience to lies. The crowd erupted in a thunder of cheers. Traoré raised his hands, calling for attention. Colonel Zongo and those involved will face justice. But let me be clear. Justice will not be revenge. Those who acted under false pretenses, believing they were protecting the nation, will be treated with fairness and mercy. But those who knowingly accepted foreign funds to betray our sovereignty will be held fully accountable. From the corner of his eye, Traoré saw Zongo being led to a secure vehicle. The colonel glanced up once, ashamed, defeated, but perhaps relieved that bloodshed had been averted. Just then, a Malian diplomat leaned close to the president. "We bring you a proposal," he said. "A mutual pact. Defense and resource sovereignty, united. If we stand together, we can resist those who seek to divide and control us." Traoré smiled, a true, wide smile for the first time all day. "From crisis comes opportunity. Let's begin discussions immediately." That night, as the capital lit up with celebration, talks began on forming a new regional alliance, an African coalition rooted not in foreign loans or aid packages, but in partnership, dignity, and shared destiny. The coup that was meant to collapse Traoré's government had instead ignited a continent-wide movement. In those 26 hours of captivity, something extraordinary had been born. Traoré entered his prison cell as the president of one nation. He emerged as a symbol for an entire continent's future. As the dawn light broke once again over Ouagadougou, people flooded the streets, not because they were ordered to, but because they were inspired. On rooftops and radios, in marketplaces and mosques, a single message echoed across the land. What belongs to Africa must serve Africans first. The time of exploitation is over. The time of reclamation has begun.